Um,
Hold on. Good morning and
good.
welcome to Making Sense of It. I am Mona Duncan, your moderator, and this program is our gift to you from the Glasser Institute for Choice Theory. Each week we have a certified member come on and tell us something about the concepts of Dr. William Glasser of choice theory and reality therapy. And our speaker today is James Soder, and he is going to be speaking on the comparing place. And what is it? How do we use it? And is it unique to choice theory? So welcome to everyone that is watching and to those of you that will be seeing later. And Jim, are you ready?
I am.
Okay, take it away.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Mona. I want to take just a quick moment to thank both Mona and Jan. I was thinking Jan might be here today, but Jan had reached out and sent some fine letters out to kind of re-engage people and get people motivated again. And I found that very helpful and encouraging. Mona, I think that, again, I wanted to thank you for maintaining the connection and doing all the work that you've been doing with that, and for giving me the opportunity to present today. I appreciate that.
Well, my pleasure.
All right, so I'm going to try and keep track of my time so that we have some interaction here and so forth. But if I were to ask either of you what the comparing place means to you, what would you say, and how do you use it? So what does it mean and how do you use it?
Well, to me, the comparing place is kind of weighing and measuring. And since all behavior is purposeful, I like to look at it as, am I wasting my time or am I using it effectively?
Okay. All right. Thank you. Sharon?
Well, I do, and Mona summed it up very well, of course. But, it's that point that once I understood it, it says, hey, either do something differently to get what you want or change, so that's my signal to know that some action needs to be done on my part.
Great. Thank you both. Well, the interesting thing to me about the comparing place, and the reason I chose it was that, before I got out of grad school, when I started graduate school, in our first semester, first couple of weeks, we were guided to pick a theory. And I had chosen rational emotive therapy. Mm-hmm. And then I listened to a few tapes with Albert Ellis, and I thought, boy, if I say the words that he's saying, I'm going to get kicked out of grad school. So I had to write a little bit of a paper and present it as to why I wanted to change. So there was some comparing going on there, and a pretty extensive comparing place. And when I chose Glasser, I thought that in my comparison at that time, it fit very well. It fit perfectly with rehabilitation counseling psychology. And the reason was that rehabilitation counseling focused on three areas: management, education, and counseling therapy. So that was just, obviously a perfect fit. And so I delved into it more. And then I learned that a professor in our English department who he had a PhD in English, and he had started to take some classes in the psychology department, because he was a recovering alcoholic, and he was really devoted to AA and his recovery, but he wanted to know more about how to help people more effectively. And lo and behold, he had stumbled on the choice theory, and got into certification process and so forth. And he kind of took me under his wing, and he had, of course, had the big chart sitting up above his desk on the wall. And I thought that was pretty impressive. But that wasn't the start of my endeavor in choice theory. My endeavor, or my introduction, I should say, my somewhat vicarious introduction to choice theory was when I was about 14 and found a book on an airplane that it was titled Positive Addiction. And between Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania and Florida, I reviewed that book, and I was a slow reader, so I didn't pick up the whole book or anything, but I had that influence. And then eventually I got into doing some work at a factory that my uncle was asking me to do. It was family owned by a distant cousin, and my uncle ran the factory, and they had implemented Deming's economic philosophy. And I got to graduate school, or got to my bachelor's degree, and had read in a psychology book about a little bit about Glasser. And eventually, when I chose that theory in graduate school, I started putting 2 and 2 and 2 and 2 and 2 and 2 together, and it all started kind of to click. So I probably read about 20 books before I got out of grad school on choice theory. So but when it comes to all of that, and then having gone through I pretty much did it on time. I went through the certification process in the 18 months. During that process, I don't remember talking much about comparing place at all through that whole time. And when Mona and I chatted about picking something to do, I thought, well, this is I'm sitting there explaining this chart every day to clients, and to kind of keep it narrow and to keep it as simple as possible initially, I introduced them to the behavioral car, the perceptual system, and the basic needs. And all 3 of those just hit home like a lightning bolt. And now a couple of times I've used the 7 habits sheet and relationship habits. And I can remember 2 women within the past couple of months reading those and calling me immediately on the phone and saying, that's it. That's all I need. That's perfect. I'm doing all those bad things, and I'm not doing any of those good things. And that's what I got to do. I got to do those good things. And so there was this immediate comparing. And of course, the scale is right there on that sheet. So the reason I chose this when Mona and I were talking was that it didn't seem like it was getting its due. It seemed like at the time that I chose it, it was almost, an kind of ambiguous part of the chart. And what I did was to try and kind of figure out what was going on with it. Now, I'd been out of touch with some of the literature and stuff for a while. And I thought, how do I want to approach this? And I had a limited amount of time. So I actually did a little interview series, and I interviewed 3 people. And then, of course, just asking the 2 of you what your thoughts were on the comparing place, and in the most simple way. Wendell Walker is somebody I've had contact with, since I started choice theory in like 93 or something like that, the formal process in 93. And when I spoke with Wendell, one of the things I like about Wendell is he always keeps things simple, very practical, but he's also very creative. And so right away, we were on the phone. We weren't doing a Zoom or anything. He's on the phone, and he's giving this really good description of putting your hands out in front of yourself and using them like a scale, just kind of weighing things out, and describing how he would use that with a client. And that was basically his perspective of the comparing place. So, and we talked a little bit, and there were other concepts involved, but then I had wanted to make contact with Mr. Martin from the last, from the conference, and I did that. And he had given me, and one of the things that he had emphasized in his presentation was working on the big ideas. And I think that the comparing place is actually a bigger idea than most of us tend to realize. And between he and Dr. Mr. Mike Fulkerson, the two of them had kind of encouraged me to do a little history on it, and they both gave me some significant history. So I want to mention that the comparing place, well, we tend to think of it as somewhat simple and easy. It is, and it can be, and it's a very useful part of the chart in that sense. And it's a very useful part of the psychoeducational aspect with clients, both whether you're talking about business or whether you're talking about schools or within counseling. And but the reason that it's so important is because of two reasons. One, its simplicity in explanation. You know, it has that flexibility, but it also has the flexibility to be somewhat more involved. And so we can use it to gauge when we're in discussion with clients and teaching this theory, how fast we need to go, how quickly we can go, how quickly we can expand the quality world and the picture world with that person. And of course, we're using it in a sense of guiding our own teaching and explanation, but also giving that to them in the sense that this is what we do. And interestingly enough, everybody's going to come up with the idea that, you know, I already compare and contrast and I already evaluate things and stuff like that. Choice theory does it in a little different way. And it's a very positive way. It's a very relationship oriented way. And we can go right through all the concepts of how that happens. And one of the reasons that this comparing place is so important to choice theorists is, and again, I want to emphasize that I think it's underdone, so to speak, on the chart, in that we tend to neglect it a little bit. But that's where all these parts fit. When we're talking about relationships, when we're talking about looking at our needs, that's where we're doing it. And if we look back at Powers and we look back at some of these other people, they were all trying to implement a scientific method, and they were kind of trying to figure out if there was an actual way to identify a part of the brain that literally did this. You know, is it the front lobe? Is it the, you know, whatever lobe? And nobody has ever done that. So I think what I have come up with, and with just utilizing my knowledge base and having a limited time to kind of put these pieces together and look at this comparing place a little more in depth. And I do have some background that's unique to me as a professional in head trauma research and head trauma application of rehabilitation and things like that. I don't think that there is just one place in the brain. I don't think there's one place that we just compare. I think that what we tend to overlook is that the brain must have multiple places that it compares. So we have a place in the brain that might compare visual aspects, a place in the brain that might compare hearing aspects, touch and all the sensory aspects. We certainly have a place in the brain that differentiates between mathematics and language and all of these areas. So this is an area in which we need to tune into a little bit more in order to apply this to people that we're talking to. So if we're talking to the CEO of a company, we need to figure out, is this person, he's probably going to be a person who's a little more balanced. He can tune into some sensory things. He can tune into some visual, but he's also going to tune into some math and those sorts of things. He's going to learn in a variety of ways. But as a teacher in a first grade classroom, we're really concerned with, is this an auditory learner? Is this a visual learner? And if we're not comparing and contrasting in their types or learning to teach them to weigh things out in their perspective, then we're going to miss the boat, and we're not going to build that relationship with and get the child involved as easily as we would want to. So there's a knowledge base that we have to have in order to use that comparing place effectively. And so I think that what you two share, I'm sure, and Linda is here too, and Linda didn't get a chance to express her idea of that comparing place. And Linda, you're welcome to do that if you want to take a minute and just tell us in a few words what you think that comparing place means to you, or how you use it.
But I always had trouble with this chart. I like the keep it simple, stupid method. That
Okay.
chart always rattled me. But I don't know. I always remember Glasser at some point saying to people, they give their whole story and what they're doing, and they'd always say, like, how's that working out for you? And people would like stop in their tracks and reevaluate. You could see them, reevaluate. And I don't know. I was thinking, what is the question of the comparing place? Like, how would Glasser, and where would that question belong? How's that working for you?
Right. And I appreciate that. And if I could add to that just a little bit, I spent 5 years counseling in one of the North Carolina state's facilities that's called Dart Cherry. And Dart Cherry is a 90-day addiction institute, and not an institute, but a 90-day addiction treatment facility. And so mostly probation parolees who have violated, they get sent there for treatment. And one of the big issues there is that there are no master's level people there. I was the first one to be hired. They've been 25 years in operation. They basically went with high school diploma people. And most of those people, most of the staff members referred to it as a babysitting job. And they had burned all the AA books and burned all the Bibles, and they were just on this track of, they didn't know what the heck they were going to do to treat these people for 25 years. And when I introduced choice theory and reality therapy, there was a lot of kickback, of course. And but the funny thing was that this happened, one of the concepts that I think we underplay as well with the comparing, as in conjunction with the comparing place, is that choice theory happens naturally in nature and in our man-made society. And one of the hardcore people that would facilitate a group in this facility, for instance, would use exactly that statement, Linda. He would say, well, how's that work? And you gotta imagine this guy. He's extremely overweight. He looks like he's been run through the ringer a few times. He just, doesn't take very good care of himself. He's a recovering addict of 40 some years. He's a nice guy and he's very bright, but he just doesn't make a real solid appearance and just has no regard for taking care of himself whatsoever. And all of a sudden he would just come out of his very slouched position and, well, how's that working for you? That kind of presentation. And that was his big question, whenever somebody elaborated on what was going on in their life and what they were doing. But that was my approach to him was, well, there you go. You've got a really specific choice theory question that you're already using. So, would you consider taking a look at a few of these other things and maybe comparing it? And we were partners. We kind of we were set up in a buddy system. So we were kind of introducing things to each other. So that's kind of a little bit of the straight skinny of the modern use of it, and touching on Powers and a couple of other people. There's when I talked with Mike, he had done a nice article for the International Journal on how Applegate, Bob Applegate, and I'm sorry, Gary Applegate and Bob Cockrum, Cockrum, had made such an influence on him on these on this particular area of the chart, as well as many other aspects of choice theory. And Mike reflected on this is what I'm going to end with, because I know I'm already over time, Mona. Mike reflected on Gary introducing him to 4 aspects of change. You could change what the person has, and he was referring somewhat there to total behavior. You could change what they wanted. That was the second one, quality world picture. And then the third one, you could change both. You could change what they want and what they have, moving toward need fulfillment. And then the fourth one was that you could change their perception between what they want and what they have, reframe it in a means of motivation, change the perception of their need. And my ending would be that I would have added a fifth one and taken that, maybe even the fifth one. I find it extremely valuable to help people look at their needs. Most of them, especially addicts, when we start talking about fun and I ask them to give me 5 completely different examples of fun, or to compare their fun now to fun that they have when they're using, or fun that they have when with family, there's a whole bunch of stuff that's missing in every one of their need fulfillments. And one of those aspects is longevity. How do I have longevity? How do I define fun with longevity in mind? How do I define belonging with longevity in mind? And so on and so forth. And of course, there's different levels of longevity. I mean, we can talk, the drug addict is having fun with the very moment. And that usually only lasts, is the more they use the drug, the shorter the time of fun it actually is. And so when we're talking about having fun for a day or 2 or 3 or 4, the addict has to keep shooting up. But a person who has that defined in several different ways, as opposed to just one way or 2 ways, and fun can be defined in dozens and dozens of ways. We have the songs in the past that document American history. So the song "Girls Just Want to Have Fun" was so narrowly defined, and everybody knows it. And that taught our culture so much wrong stuff about the need of fun. It taught young men that women didn't have a brain, that they weren't to be respected, that they weren't given any dignity. They just wanted to have fun. And it was typically thought of as a party fun. And then there were songs like "Just Be Happy." Well, if you don't take control of your life and change your perceptions of different things and engage belonging in a variety of ways, you're not going to be happy, and you're not going to have longevity in happiness. So I think choice theory has a very special place in that comparing section, and it cannot be underestimated in our chart. And we need to give it probably more attention, and if possible, do more writing about it and explanations about it. And there is actually something online that you can take a look at, and that has to do with rational choice theory. Have you ever heard of rational choice theory? look up rational choice theory, and there's more terminology from the mid 1800s by an economist.
Mhm.
So yeah, and in that theory and explanation, they actually allude to emotional control as well as economic control and so on and so forth. So there's stuff pre-Powers. Am I saying that well? Do you understand?
Mhm,
So
sure.
there's history there that goes back to emotional development. So when we're talking about branding some of these concepts and bringing choice theory again to the forefront of psychology, and we start talking about research as Martin did, or not Martin, but as Mr. Fulkerson did when we had the discussion with Dr. Wobelding as well. There's more history there and more documentation than I think we realize, and this comparing place is a very significant part of that. So that kind of concludes my presentation. I think I had a little bit of information overload, so I apologize for going over a few minutes.
Well, that's okay. And it's a lot to digest. So you've given us some good things to think about.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that very much. The thing of it is that looking at the fact that, you know, we are all intelligent and we can see things in a way that we don't even know we're seeing them because we don't always have the way to language them or the math to extract it from.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And that as we can look back and we can look now, we keep adding words and giving new definitions of things, and they can become more clear or they can become more muddy. But I really like your adding that longevity to looking at, and at the comparing place, and learning to compare. But anyway, you've given us a lot to think about, and I thank you very, very much for being here. And thank all of you that are here live. So stay around and we'll talk with James a little bit more after we close out. And
If
those of
anybody-
you that are watching later, there's a whole bunch of these making sense of it videos on the website. And so make use of those and learn more about it. And
if I may
good.
say one last thing, I do have a pretty decent outline of most of these concepts, although some of the concepts on the lines are not fully complete sentences. But if anybody's interested, Mona, or you can email Mona or I, and I'm happy to forward this outline to you and share that, just share that along.
Sounds good. Thanks a lot. And have a blessed day.